So the day that Mom passed, we gathered at the house and we were sitting around sharing memories of her and talking about our lives. And we started talking about different rituals, holiday rituals, and so forth at our house growing up. And Karen mentioned that at Pentecost, Mom would do this thing where she would cut out paper in the shape of a flame.
Because she would have 7 flames of the Holy Spirit with one of the gifts written on each one, and then they would be turned over, and each of us kids, who happened to be 7, would pick one of the flames, and that would be our gift for the year.
And I don't recall that because I think maybe that stopped by the time I was old enough to be paying attention. But still, I was really intrigued by this idea. So I thought the 7 kids, the 7 gifts, we would look at Mom's life through the prism of those 7 gifts.
What's that? 7 deadly sins? 7 deadly sins, okay. Oh, no? 7 gifts, okay. 7 gifts.
And so the first one of these is wisdom.
When I broke up with my first girlfriend, which was done over a phone because she lived so far away from San Pedro, she lived in Long Beach. And when that breakup happened, I was rather stricken. And she knew that the solution was not to tell me there was plenty more fish in the ocean or any of that kind of trite stuff that people would say. She knew what the secret was to making me feel better. She got me this enormous bowl of ice cream, which is very rare in our family that we were given ice cream on anything other than Sunday. And she gave me this great bowl of ice cream that was to comfort me. And strangely enough, it did.
We would often do bad things. We weren't always the consistently virtuous people that you see before you today. As a tot, I did some things that were absolutely not great. Stealing things from the store, for instance. And when you were caught doing said bad thing, the way Mom handled it was just really unique. What I recall is she would sit you down and she would say, "So what happened?" And you would have to describe it to her. And she would really listen. She didn't moralize. She didn't tell you all the reasons it was wrong. What happened is that when you described it, it became abundantly clear that it was a crappy thing to do. And I think a lot of us, because Mom was so trusting of us, we would feel this weight that trust had been violated by us doing something that she wouldn't like. But I think her absence of judgment towards us about those things was just a real hallmark of wisdom. I think wisdom doesn't have room for judgment. And the remarkable thing is it really worked. Like, I never stole after the one bad example of that. And I think all of us are relatively virtuous. It's kind of counterintuitive that wasn't the result of a mother who was sort of moralizing all the time. And I really think about what a tricky thing that is, to give the freedom to your children to make mistakes, but also to care very much about the outcomes. That requires a real kind of spiritual dexterity. And Mom really exemplified that.
Mom had a very understanding heart, and I feel that she really, knew all of her children and trusted us. Maybe that wasn't always the wisest, but she did. She trusted us always. got a scholarship to a Catholic high school, to Marymount, and that was the year I went rogue. I was a terrible student. I didn't study, and Mom and Dad got called in several times because I was in detention, and I told her that I didn't want to go to that school anymore. I didn't feel comfortable. I wanted to go to this, humongous public school, and that was fine. There was no talking me out of it. I just felt she just had such a good understanding of that, of life, of human nature, of people, and especially us, her kids.
Hi, this is Patrick, and I have a couple of stories about Mom and understanding. And the first was when I was pretty little, and Greg and I had watched a movie on TV that had knights fighting, and we loved it. And so we would be outside fighting with sticks and trash can lids. And Mom knew that I was really inspired by this, and so she went up to Carl's toy store up in Westchester and bought this nice plastic helmet and sword and shield for me. And it wasn't the one that I wanted. So I took it back to the store. I got the money for it, and I ended up spending that on all kinds of, candy and little flashlights and stationery and all these little things that caught my eye. And then it hit me, one night, like just how I had betrayed her heart of wanting to do something really nice for me. And I ended up, every night I would lay in bed on the top bunk and just start crying and just thinking about her and that she wanted to do something really nice for me. And what did I do? I traded it for candy. The other was, I remember when I was 15 and I had written a poem about America, and I showed it to Dad. And then the first thing Dad did, as English professor that he was take out a red pen and start to go through it, which made me absolutely furious that my artistic creativity and my talent was not being recognized appropriately. And I remember one day just like coming into Mom, she was cooking dinner, of course, and I was just railing, and I played her the song "Father and Son" by Cat Stevens, and it's like, this is me, this really reflects my heart, and she was just so patient and listened and understood me and understood that I was in a weird place, and so she just represented this kind of calm, patient understanding that calmed me down and allowed me, I think, later to really reflect and have a very deep and profound experience, because of all that, an experience that led me much closer to Dad. And I think she was such a beautiful bridge to Dad and to ourselves. Like, she allowed me to see myself differently just by her patient, wisdom and understanding. Anyway, I love my mom.
She's very easy to talk to, especially, at least for me, when I was a teenager. I could always find her in the kitchen, and we would talk about something that was happening. It might be something in music. It might be something to deal with the Vietnam War and the anti-war movement. It might be just about some conflict I was having with someone. But she was always capable of giving good counsel and of really helping me find solutions for things and to help me to understand things better.
Mom was so easy to talk to, and she offered great advice. A lot of times, we were telling her what we thought, and she listened patiently. But when we did ask her for advice, she really, did give good counsel. And I think people really felt that from her, friends who came over to our house, they really liked being around Mom. She wasn't like the other parents. She didn't seem, authoritarian. She was more of an advocate, and they could sense that in her. And later, when she volunteered at St. Margaret's Center, the same thing. I felt like people connected to her, the other staff and interns and clients too, who called her Mom. But she just had this way of being that, she was just very approachable.
I remember when I first got my heart broken really bad, and I was working at Licorice Pizza record store, and I fell in love with my best friend's girlfriend, and we all worked at the store, and it was messy. And I remember I couldn't eat or drink for several days, and so I remember being at the house and trying to drink a little orange juice and have a little pizza or something, and running to the bathroom, and then throwing up, and then coming back and sitting at the table, and so Mom came over and sat down and said, "What's going on?" And her presence was like counsel to me, like just almost like a priest sitting in her presence, and like all your problems kind of go away, and then you're just left in the glow of her love.
The other thing that I think about when I think about you and the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit is the story you told about being a young woman in New York, and African-American woman came on the bus and she was forced to stand because of the color of her skin. And you gave up your seat for her. You were always standing up for good versus evil.
I think of Mom as just this kick-ass woman from the get-go. So, she was born almost 3 months premature, and survived that, and then having her father die when she was fairly young, and her mother developed a drinking problem after that. So she endured a lot in her young life, and then she went to college. She decided to leave college to go to Grailville, which must have been a big leap to do that, and join this religious community for 2 years. And then during the war, she was a draftswoman, which probably was not very common for women. And the other side of her, she loved to dance. And so she, joined the Desert Battalion to go dance with soldiers in Palm Springs. And then when she and Dad went to Greece, they lived in this little tiny village. And I was very fortunate to spend a few months with them there. And they had to walk through this, dirt road to the town, which was a mile away, every day to get their, food. And, you had to go to the egg store to buy eggs, and the chicken store to buy chicken, and the bread store to buy bread. But, she did really well. And later in life, when I was down in Ecuador, and I encouraged her to come visit me, I remember we took this, we flew this little tiny, very scary plane to the Amazon area, to the rainforest, and we took a 8-hour canoe ride down one of the tributaries of the Amazon, and 8 hours no bathroom break, and she did great. She was a trooper. And then, after Dad died, she was so strong. She just was her own person, and to the very end, till her last days, she had so much spirit in her, fight in her.
I think of Mom's journey after Dad died, a journey of 30 years, almost a third of her life. Can you imagine, after such a long marriage, after losing the man who was the soil you planted your life in, of waking up every morning and suddenly realizing, oh yeah, I'm alone, and doing that 11,000 times. Mom really felt that loss very deeply. One of the Sundays I was with her, we were looking at photo albums, and I gave her a photo album of her and Dad in Greece. And I could hear her whisper, "My darling, I miss you so much." And that was after 20 years after he was gone. But despite that, she kept showing up. She'd show up to St. Margaret's as a volunteer, to her Bible study, to keeping the house going that we grew up in. So I guess in a sense you could call that kind of like fortitude, like a grim determination, like just soldiering on, But she did it with love and with grace and with a total absence of self-pity. And so I would call that courage. She carried that burden for 30 years with a smile on her face. What a badass.
When I think of Mom, I think how focused she was in learning about new things. I think probably she was a really good student. Never saw a report card, but I imagine. But early in life, she liked to dance. She took dancing classes at Arthur Murray Studios, and then she ended up teaching there, which shows how good she was. And she was a really good sewer. She made her own designs. I have this little jacket that she made that's beautiful. Later in life, she took classes. She took a class in paper mache and just made these beautiful paper mache artwork that we had displayed in our house. We still have one on our front porch. But she was very, very artistic. She took a reupholstery class and reupholstered 2 enormous couches that we have in our living room, and just did a magnificent job with them. She went to New York earlier in her life and went to the Cordon Bleu School of Cooking, and became a really good cook. But I think, my impression is that, everything she put her mind to, she did well.
Yeah, we were surrounded by Dad's books, his library of books in the house, but we didn't realize that Mom was seeking knowledge in her own right constantly throughout her life, even up until the last year of her life. And I didn't realize this until I started looking through some of her the books that she had been saving, and realized that she shared a lot of the same interests as me, like nutrition, exercise, some psychological things. And, it was clear that she was always trying to improve her life and our lives by learning new things and building awareness of things happening in the world, keeping up to date on things, I remember the TM, I'm okay, you're okay thing. She had a seeking mind.
My mother instilled in us her faith by showing us her faith. Her faith was very strong. My experiences were we went to Mass every morning and every Sundays as a family. We took up a whole pew. It was fun. She taught us to be true Catholics, the Catholics that she believed we were to be as her children. She passed on her warmth and her smile for people every day. That's what I have to hold on to, is my smile and my love for people she had given to me. Also, there's a funny story that goes along with this, and I remember one time on a Monday a morning Mass, we were sitting in the pew and the priest announced that during the intentions that I had passed away, and I was on the deceased prayer list. And my mother and I both looked at each other and we made this funny face, and then I raised my hand because I was there. And afterwards we went in and talked to the priest, and he felt so bad. But I was not deceased. My mom and I had a great laugh about it for a long time, and I appreciate the fact that she was with me and that her faith is now my faith.
She had a great way of helping us when we were kids to engage with the different holidays of the season. In Lent, she would have a placard that would have different Bible sayings each day going through Lent. For Advent, she had an Advent calendar and, of course, an Advent wreath, and we would take turns lighting that. She had a number of those little tricks that would help us to focus on whatever the particular feast day or celebration was.
You know, Mom was very very spiritual, very religious. You know, she went to Grailville for 2 years and thought that she might become a nun, and I, for one, am grateful that she didn't. You know, we found before her wedding, you know, she had a get together with her women friends, and it wasn't like a bachelorette party down in Cabo. It was a prayer service, and there was a little booklet for that. You know, there was a period in my life where I was, you know, I considered myself an atheist in my early 20s, and I remember, you know, talking to Mom and telling her about my beliefs and questioning hers. And she just took it all in, you know, no judgment, no arguments. I know probably she was praying for me, which is, you know, a comfort, and it did bear fruit, I have to say. But, you know, just that, you know, religious observance was always so important to her. And she went to daily Mass, and she really lived, you know, the values of her faith and taught them to all of her children. And I feel that all of us have that inclination, you know, to help, to care for others, compassion. And we are all spiritual, religious in our own way. And I thank her for that.
Mom, you embodied all of the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit and passed so many of those on to us. One of the wonderful gifts that you gave us was saving the letters that you and Dad wrote each other while he was in England, at the time Martha was born. And in those letters, you talked about how you couldn't wait to see him. You prayed the rosary for him every night, and that so many people advised you to take off when he came home, since he left you with 5 kids at home. And instead, you just talked about how loving and gracious he was. Everything you did, everything you were, was for the wonder and love and grace and perfection of God, which is a clear definition of fear of God. You showed that in everything you did, how you raised us, how you treated everyone. I remember so many times people coming up to us in a store or at a doctor's office and recognizing you by your smile. And you just had this ability to give everybody just such a wonderful feeling because of your love for God. Mom, I love you. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Yes. Okay, I love it.